Once upon a time, there lived in a village a little girl that everybody called Little Red Riding Hood because of the hood she wore. One day her mother said to her, "Go, my dear, and see how your grandmother is doing, for I hear she has been very ill. Take her a cake and a pot of butter." As she was going through the woods, Little Red Riding Hood met a wolf who wanted to eat her up, but dared not because of some woodcutters working nearby. He asked her where she was going, and the child, who didn't know that wolves are dangerous, said to him, "I am carrying a cake and a pot of butter to my grandmother." "Does she live far off?" asked the wolf. "It is beyond that mill you see there," answered Little Red Riding Hood. "I'll go and see her too," said the wolf. "I'll go this way and you go that way, and we'll see who will be there first." The wolf took the shortest path and ran as fast as he could, while the little girl took a roundabout way, entertaining herself by gathering nuts and flowers and running after butterflies. The wolf soon arrived at the old woman's house. He knocked at the door. Knock, knock. "Who's there?" "Your grandchild, Little Red Riding Hood," replied the wolf, counterfeiting her voice. "Who has brought you a cake and a pot of butter." The grandmother, who was in bed because she was ill, cried out, "Pull the bobbin and the latch will go up." The wolf pulled the bobbin and the door opened, and then he immediately fell upon the old woman and locked her in a closet. He hastily put on the grandmother's nightdress and nightcap, then got into her bed and pulled the blanket up to his nose. Then came Little Red Riding Hood and knocked at the door. Knock, knock. "Who's there?" Little Red Riding Hood, hearing the big voice of the wolf, believed her grandmother had a cold and answered, "It is your grandchild who has brought you a cake and a pot of butter." The wolf cried out to her, softening his voice, "Pull the bobbin and the latch will go up." Little Red Riding Hood pulled the bobbin and the door opened. The wolf said to her, hiding himself under the bedclothes, "Put the cake and the pot of butter upon the stool and come to bed with me." Little Red Riding Hood took off her clothes and got into bed. She was greatly amazed to see how her grandmother looked in her nightclothes. She said to her, "Grandmother, what big arms you have." "All the better to hug you with, my dear." "Grandmother, what big legs you have." "All the better to run with, my child." "Grandmother, what big ears you have." "All the better to hear you with, my child." "Grandmother, what big eyes you have." "All the better to see you with, my child." "Grandmother, what big teeth you have." "All the better to eat you up with." And saying these words, the wicked wolf fell upon Little Red Riding Hood. Screaming all she could, she ran to the door, but she was trembling so much that she couldn't open it. A woodsman who was chopping logs nearby heard her cry and ran towards the cottage as fast as he could. When he arrived, he saw the wolf and Little Red Riding Hood through the window. He rushed in and knocked out the wolf, right in time. With his claws, the beast had already grabbed Little Red Riding Hood's dress. The woodsman held the little girl against his heart when they heard someone knocking in the closet. It was the grandmother, of course. The three of them were happy. The woodsman took the wolf's pelt home. The grandmother ate the cake and butter and became strong and well again. And Little Red Riding Hood thought to herself, "I will never leave the path and run off into the woods by myself if Mother tells me not to." Once upon a time, a mother duck was waiting for her eggs to hatch. Little by little, all the shells cracked and ducklings came out of the eggs. But the duckling that came out of the biggest egg was very large and ugly. Back in the farmyard, The poor duckling was bitten and pushed and made fun of by all the farm animals. "He is too big," they all said. The poor duckling was pestered by everyone. Even his brothers and sisters were unkind to him. So at last he ran away. He came out on a large moor inhabited by wild ducks and met two wild geese who told him, "You are so ugly that we like you very well. Will you go with us and become a bird of passage?" Suddenly some hunters arrived. A large, terrible dog thrust his nose close to the duckling but didn't touch him. The duckling waited quietly for several hours and then hastened away from the moor as fast as he could. The duckling reached a poor little cottage where a woman, a cat, and a hen lived. After a while, he wanted to go swim on the water, but the hen said, "You must be crazy. You should lay eggs and learn to purr as quickly as possible." Desperate, the duckling left the cottage and soon found water on which he could swim and dive, but was avoided by all the other animals because of his ugly appearance. Autumn came, and the raven stood on the ferns crying, "Caw, caw!" Then the duckling saw beautiful swans who spread their glorious wings and flew away from those cold regions to warmer countries across the sea. The winter grew colder and colder, and it froze so hard that the duckling ended frozen fast in the ice. In the morning, a peasant saw him, broke the ice, and carried the duckling home. The warmth revived the poor duckling, but when the children wanted to play with him, he thought they would do him some harm and fluttered into the milk pan, flew into the butter cask, then into the meal tub before escaping through the door. Back on the moor, the duckling saw that the beautiful spring had arrived. From a thicket close by came 3 beautiful white swans. He thought they wanted to mock him, but when he bent his head down, he saw in the water below that he was no longer a dark grey bird, ugly and disagreeable to look at, but a graceful and beautiful swan. Some children came and threw bread and cake into the water. "See!" cried the youngest. "There is a new one! He is the most beautiful of all! He is so young and pretty!" The swan rustled his feathers and cried joyfully from the depths of his heart. "I never dreamed of such happiness as this while I was an ugly duckling." Once upon a time, there lived a miller who had 3 sons. Upon his death, the oldest received the mill, the second oldest the donkey, but the youngest only got the tomcat. He was desperate. "My brothers may get their living easily enough, but as for me, I may soon die of hunger." The cat, who had heard this, said, "Do not worry, my good master. You have only to give me a bag and a pair of boots, and you shall see that your share is not so bad as you imagine it to be." Once the cat obtained what he had asked for, he pulled on the boots and walked away with the bag. He went to a warren in which there were a great number of rabbits. He put some bran and parsley into his bag and then waited for some innocent rabbit to feast on the dainties. Soon, 2 young rabbits jumped into his bag and Puss in Boots caught them. Puss in Boots hurried to the palace and asked to speak to the king. Bowing low, Puss said, "Sire, here are rabbits from the warren of the Marquis of Carabas," the title Puss gave to his master, "with his compliments." The king was much pleased. Thus, the cat continued to carry game to the king for a few months. Then one day, Puss in Boots said to his master, "Follow my advice and your fortune is made. Go to the river and bathe just where I show you." The Marquis did exactly as the cat advised, and while he was bathing, the king passed by in his coach with his daughter. Then Puss in Boots began to cry out, "Help! Help! My Lord Marquis of Carabas is drowning!" Hearing the cries, the king ordered his attendants to go to the rescue of the Marquis. While they were drawing him from the river, Puss in Boots told His Majesty that thieves had run off with his master's clothes, though in reality he himself had hidden them under a stone. The king ordered his officers to give a suit to the Marquis. After he was dressed, the king's daughter fell deeply in love with him, and the king asked him to ride in the coach with them. Quite overjoyed, Puss in Boots marched before the coach, giving orders to the workmen he met along the way. As the king came by, he asked some mowers working in a meadow to whom it belonged. "To my Lord Marquis of Carabas," the mowers answered as the cat had instructed them. The king complimented the Marquis. Soon, the coach passed another field where labourers were working industriously, and the king asked to whom it belonged. They all answered, "To my Lord Marquis of Carabas." The king once more complimented the Marquis. At last, Puss in Boots arrived at a stately castle. It belonged to an ogre, the richest ever known, and all the lands through which the king had passed that morning belonged to him. The ogre received Puss in Boots as civilly as an ogre could do. "I have been told," began Puss in Boots, "that you have the power to change yourself into all sorts of animals, like a rat or a mouse." "You shall see," replied the ogre. And in an instant he became a mouse and began to scamper about the floor. No sooner had Puss seen the mouse than he sprang upon her and ate her. In the meantime, the king's coach approached the ogre's castle. Puss in Boots hastened out. "Your Majesty is welcome to the castle of my Lord Marquis of Carabas," he said. "And is this splendid castle also yours, my Lord Marquis of Carabas?" inquired the king. "Let us go in, if you please." The Marquis gave his hand to the princess and followed the king inside, where they found a splendid feast which had been prepared by the ogre for some of his friends. The king was so charmed with the good qualities of the Marquis that he said, "It will be your own fault if you do not soon become my son-in-law, my dear Lord Marquis of Carabas." So the princess became the bride of the Marquis, and they lived happily ever after. Puss in Boots was made major domo and became so great a personage that he would not even think of looking at a mouse. Once upon a time, there was a mother sow who lived in an old barn with her 3 little pigs. When the little pigs were old enough to be on their own, she sent them out to seek their fortune. The first little pig that went off met a man with a bundle of straw and said to him, "Please, man, give me that straw to build me a house," which the man did, and the little pig built a house with it. Presently came along a wolf and knocked at the door and said, little pig, let me come in." To which the pig answered, "No, not by the hair of my chinny-chin-chin." "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in," said the wolf. So he huffed and he puffed and he blew his house in. The first little pig barely escaped the hungry wolf and and ran as fast as he could back to the safety of the old barn and his mother sow. The second little pig met with a man with a bundle of sticks and said, "Please, man, give me those sticks to build a house," which the man did, and the pig built his house. Then along came the wolf and said, little pig, let me come in." "No, not by the hair of my chinny chin chin." "Then I'll puff and I'll huff and I'll blow your house in." So he huffed and he puffed and he puffed and he huffed, and at last he blew the house down. The second little pig barely escaped the hungry wolf and ran as fast as he could back to the safety of the old barn and his mother sow. The third little pig met a man with a load of bricks and said, "Please, man, give me those bricks to build a house with." So the man gave him the bricks, and the pig built a strong, sturdy house with them. The wolf came, as he did to the other little pigs. "I'll catch and eat up this third pig for sure," he declared. So the wolf said, little pig, let me come in." "No, not by the hair of my chinny chin chin." "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in." Oh, he huffed and he puffed and he huffed and he puffed and he puffed and he huffed, but he could not blow the strong brick house down. When he found that he could not, with all his huffing and puffing, blow the house down, the wolf was very angry indeed, and declared he would eat up the little pig right that minute, even if he had to get down the chimney to catch him. When the little pig saw what the wolf was doing, he hung up a pot full of water and made up a blazing fire, and just as the wolf was coming down, took off the cover of the pot and said, "Try to eat me, will you? How would you like it if I cook and eat you up?" The wolf hit the scalding water and let out a great yell. He scampered quickly back up the chimney and ran as fast as he could back to the safety of the old den in the woods with his mother. The next day, the three little pigs invited their mother to live with them in the brick house. The wolf never bothered them again, and they all lived happy ever after.